I found a Reddit thread about a man in a green hoodie. Now he's following me. I never thought a single Reddit thread would change my life forever. But here I am, 2 years later, still trying to wrap my head around everything that happened. It all started on a random Tuesday night. I was scrolling through r/unresolved mysteries, as I often did when I couldn't sleep. You know, the usual stuff: cold cases, missing persons, cryptic clues that no one could figure out. But this one post was different. The title was simple: "Has anyone else seen the man in the green hoodie?" I clicked on it, expecting some urban legend or a creepy pasta. But as I read through the OP's story, my stomach started to twist. They described a man in a green hoodie who had been following them for weeks. At first, it was just small things: seeing him at the grocery store, spotting him across the street from their apartment. But then it escalated. The man started showing up at their workplace, standing outside their gym, even appearing in the background of their Zoom calls. The OP was terrified, but no one believed them. Not the police, not their friends, not even their family. What really got me, though, was the photo they included. It was blurry, taken from a distance, but you could clearly see a man in a green hoodie standing under a street lamp. And here's the kicker: I recognized him. Not the man, but the street lamp. It was on the corner of my block. I live in a small town, and that street lamp is right outside the diner I go to every Saturday morning. My heart started racing. Was this some kind of prank? A coincidence? I didn't know, but I had to find out. I commented on the post, asking the OP where they were from. They didn't respond right away, so I started digging through their post history. It was sparse, mostly comments on gaming forums and a few random questions about tech support. But then I found something. A month earlier, they'd posted in r/travel asking for recommendations for a small town in the Midwest. They mentioned they were planning a road trip and wanted to visit somewhere off the beaten path. My town is about as off the beaten path as it gets. By this point, I was fully invested. I messaged the OP directly, asking if they'd ever been to my town. A few hours later, they replied, "Yes. That's where I first saw him." My blood ran cold. I asked for more details, and they told me they'd stopped in my town for gas during their road trip. They'd gone into the diner for a quick bite, and that's when they first noticed the man in the green hoodie sitting in the corner, staring at them. They left as quickly as they could, but the man followed them out and stood under the street lamp, watching as they drove away. I didn't know what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as some kind of elaborate hoax, but another part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I decided to go to the diner the next morning and see if I could find any clues. When I got there, I asked the waitress, Linda, if she remembered seeing anyone in a green hoodie recently. She frowned and said, "Yeah, actually. There was a guy in here a few weeks ago. Kept to himself, didn't say much." "Why do you ask?" I didn't want to freak her out, so I just said I was curious. But as I sat there eating my pancakes, I couldn't stop thinking about the man in the green hoodie. Who was he? Why was he following the OP? And why had he come to my town? I decided to take a walk around the block to clear my head. As I passed the street lamp, I noticed something scratched into the metal pole. It was faint, but I could just make it out: a series of numbers and letters. December 4th, 19 to January 14th, 20. I'm not great with codes, but I recognized this as a simple substitution cipher. Each number corresponded to a letter in the alphabet. 12 equals L, 4 laughing face, 19 equals S, and so on. When I decoded it, it spelled out Ldsant. At first, it didn't make sense. But then I realized it was missing a vowel. If I added an O, it became LDSOANT. Still nothing. Then it hit me: Landost. That didn't make sense either, but if I rearranged the letters, it spelled stolen. I Googled it, and my heart nearly stopped. St. Olland was a small town about 200 miles away. It was known for one thing: a series of unsolved disappearances that had happened over the past decade. I didn't know what to do. Should I drive to St. Olland? Should I contact the police? I decided to message the OP again, but their account had been deleted. All their posts, all their comments, gone. It was like they'd never existed. That's when I knew I had to go to St. Olland. I packed a bag, got in my car, and started driving. The whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I looked in my rearview mirror, I half expected to see a green hoodie. When I got to St. Holland, it was like stepping into a ghost town. The streets were empty, the buildings were crumbling, and there was an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. I went to the local library to see if I could find any information about the disappearances. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, seemed hesitant to talk about it at first. But when I mentioned the man in the green hoodie, her face went pale. "You've seen him too," she whispered. I nodded, and she motioned for me to follow her into the back room. She pulled out a dusty old file and handed it to me. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and photos of the missing people. All of them had one thing in common. Before they disappeared, they had reported seeing a man in a green hoodie. The police had never been able to find him, and the cases had gone cold. As I was flipping through the file, I noticed something strange. In one of the photos, there was a reflection in a window. It was blurry, but I could just make out the face of the man in the green hoodie. And that's when it hit me. I recognized him. It was the same man who had been sitting in the corner of the diner in my town. The same man who had been following the OP. The same man who had scratched that code into the street lamp. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was in way over my head. But then I remembered something the OP had said in their original post. He's always watching. He knows where I am. He knows where you are. I realized that if I didn't do something, I might be next. I decided to go to the police, but when I got to the station, it was empty. The doors were locked, the lights were off, and there was no one around. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper behind me. I turned around, and there he was. The man in the green hoodie. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at me with those cold, empty eyes. I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. And then, just as quickly as he appeared, he was gone. I don't know how long I stood there, but when I finally snapped out of it, I knew I had to get out of St. Holland. I drove back to my town as fast as I could, and I haven't been back since. But here's the thing, I still see him. Not all the time, but every now and then, I'll catch a glimpse of him out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes he's standing under the street lamp, sometimes he's in the background of my photos, and sometimes he's just there, watching me from a distance. I don't know who he is or what he wants, but I know one thing for sure, he's not done with me yet.